I've been a little bit of a thinker recently, you know, a little devious, and since this is my platform for discussion and getting my thoughts out into a video format, let's have a discussion about disappointment. Now, disappointment, rarely anybody wants to experience it, but it's inevitable to happen. And yeah, that does suck, but whether you're talking about your personal life and you getting on the right track, or projects that are coming out from like movies, television shows, video games, or even just the people around you, unfortunately, it's gonna happen. You know, like a backhanded compliment? It's kind of like that. Because if you're disappointed in someone or something or yourself, it's because you know you can do better. There is potential there. You can do more. There is these latent ideas that can be tapped for more creativity. But people are just dropping the ball. I'm lobbing you a W and you are not catching it. That's what it really is. And in comics in general, ooh, a nice segue. It is honestly monumental the amount of characters there are that have so much potential. They can be so much more, but the writers, the editors, the stakeholders, whoever the people on top are pulling the strings, they just don't want to go on that run. Whether it's a character that we've seen be successful in the past, or a character that is kind of up and coming, but people just don't want to do much with them, it is an epidemic, something that is spreading very fast. A lot of writers these days aren't exactly staying on books long enough to have these transformative experiences with these characters. Immortal Hulk, for example, that is something that you don't really expect to see in the modern age, especially since a lot of characters have been given up on. To have that level of change, also going back to the roots of the character or previous runs and digging it up for more kind of source material to work with and to expand, that is rare, right? I'm not saying a good run is rare in comics right now. I'm just saying something that completely changes the entire mythos on its axis, like a Green Lantern, Jeff Johns type of thing, where it invented the emotional spectrum and it was so good that a lot of people felt like the entire mythos that he created was there since the beginning. That type of stuff, a lot of writers are playing it either safe or they're just using the tools given to them to the best of their ability to make whatever that was there very special. And that is completely fine. But in my opinion, we're never going to see a long-form generational run with a lot of these characters on this list, right? A lot of these characters are just going to have to live with it. If we were in the 90s or the 2000s, early 2010s, I'd be like, you know what? There is a chance for things to get better. I don't want to be like very negative or just like a downer, but it's not really looking too good. And in this video, I will be talking about my favorite characters that are the definition of missed potential. You know that meme, potential man? That's who I'm going to be talking about, okay? Do you have any potential men pause in your mind right now? If you do, leave it down in the comments down below, answer the question of the day, and yeah, let's get straight into the video. And speaking of questions, let's talk about Vic Sage, also known as the Question. Now for this character, he blew up mainly because of Justice League Unlimited, and to kind of give you a bit of a blueprint so that you guys know where the character was at this point, Denny O'Neil in like 1987-ish, he created a masterpiece, in my opinion at least, with his Question series. And what it really focused on was a very philosophical kind of crime noir, martial art type of story that was very deeply human. And it focused on his internal growth and morality, all of these internal struggles, and a kind of rejection of his black and white thinking. If we're gonna roll back time real quick, when he first came out in the Charlton era by Steve Ditko, of course the creator of Spider-Man along with Stan Lee, he was an objectivist. He only believed in absolute truth, black and white morality, right? Unwavering justice. And because of this, it was so structured. It was like, if you're corrupt, you must be punished accordingly. You gotta go, you're dead. It was very cold and logical, borderline fanatical about being right and wrong. It's the idea that truth is the only thing that matters and everything else is just background noise trying to confuse you. And in the Denny O'Neil era, he got rid of all of this hardline, very stubborn way of thinking. He destructed it completely. In like the first issue, he gets beaten near death, and I'm pretty sure he might have gotten shot in the face, and he falls into a lake. And obviously this is a symbolic way of showing his rebirth, maybe even being baptized and becoming someone new. In this series, after being trained by Richard Dragon, he's introduced to a Zen-like philosophy, right? Taoism, Eastern philosophy, and stuff like that. And the idea of truth being absolute is basically drilled out of his mind. He realizes that he was a part of the problem in the cog of corruption, and that mindset that he had was very arrogant and rigid. Truth itself is by nature elusive, and by having this objectivist mindset, you could believe one thing to be true and your mind will never change, but then after the fact, you realize, oh, I was wrong, and I just killed somebody for no reason. Justice requires as Batman said, compassion, not just punishment. A lot of the times through the series, you would see Batman scold. I love Denny O'Neil Batman. He was the editor for a lot of the big Batman stuff in the 80s and the 90s, even the early 2000s, Nightfall, No Man's Land, Killing Joke, Year One, Long Halloween, Dark Victory, even Ego. He was there for all of it. A lot of the great runs you can thank Denny O'Neil, but Batman, he scolded him for a lot of his negative habits. And to really get him back on track, because him putting his life in danger while also putting other lives in danger over like a really weird philosophy isn't exactly the best way about going about saving Hub City. And Hub City, what I really liked about it is it's basically a real world city that's on the brink of destruction, whatever city that may be, just plopped into DC, because a lot of the problems, unlike Gotham, are very, very real, right? Gotham experiences corruption, but Hub City just feels like a real city that's experiencing way too much crime. But just to get back to his philosophy, one quote that I really liked that explains his shift is this: "I used to think I had all the answers, now I know better. The real power lies in asking the right questions." And that brings us to JLU and their take. And in this take, he's more about paranoia and conspiracy. He is still on the hunt for truth. He's consumed by the idea that the truth itself is hidden, but it's buried by, obviously, a bunch of corrupt systems. He's more unhinged, I think, than the comics at times, but he also doesn't kill, but he's shown to have the capacity to kill, like in the Cadmus arc. He is, by all definition, one of, if not the best character in that Cadmus arc. His stocks shot through the roof. He was very funny as well, very dry-witted. Jeffrey Combs, his voice, shot him up. He might have been a D-list character, but because of that, in my opinion, he shot up to B-list, one of my favorites in general. But yeah, he doesn't trust in the government like the main counterpart. He believes in questioning reality, not just the world. And because of this, a lot of concepts are thrown his way, and he just yaps. He is a professional yapper. He should be taking my job. But from what I see, if I were to like diagnose him with anything, I don't even know why this is turning into a therapy session, but I think he has like apophenia or something like that, seeing connections, meaningful connections in meaningless data. A lot of things he just throws out there that could completely be true, but there isn't really any evidence to base it off of. It's just a gut feeling. But he did, I have to give him credit. He did solve the Baskin-Robbins flavor dilemma when he figured out that they have 32 flavors, not 31. Why is this important? Well, in the comics, particularly in the mid-2000s, this was when Justice League Unlimited was airing, right? Question hype was at its peak, but they fumbled. Instead of giving Question maybe a long-going, I don't know, Vertigo series, or just any sort of ongoing, they killed him. They got rid of him in 52. They gave him cancer, took him off the board, and replaced him with Renee Montoya, and made her the Question. Now, I love Renee as the Question, and her in Gotham Central is one of my favorite comics of all time. But I think this was just a bad move from a business perspective. He had so many people wanting to read more about him, and there just wasn't enough source material after that initial Question run by Denny O'Neil. This is the perfect time to get somebody like Greg Rucka to write a 12-issue miniseries, because at this time, you have to remember, he was writing Checkmate, he was writing Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman at the same time. This man was locked in on DC, as well as writing 52. Imagine right after Denny O'Neil, they had a laundry list of writers who are at his level to continue that story, and they didn't just end the volume there. He would have been Daredevil tier. I'm telling you, he has what it takes to be on that level. He should have, at the very minimum, been a Moon Knight tier character, a character that doesn't get very long-standing runs, but he's always getting a run every 2-3 years. He always hops back, because he has a very loyal but tiny fan base. That is what was needed for the Question, but unfortunately we never got there. DC, he was one of your most intriguing characters, and I still think he is. Already loved, already proven to be a success story, ready in the chamber. They don't need to reinvent anything there, they just need to say something with him, in my opinion, instead of leaving the mic on the floor. But yeah, DC, there is a ball rolling at your feet. Pick it up. I think you could make gangbusters if you made like an HBO Max series with the Question and just made it Jeffrey Combs' voice when he had the mask on. Billions of dollars, I'm telling you, printing money as we speak. Now this next one gotta be the most unfortunate one there is. This is so sorry, because there's no reason for these characters to be as down on their luck as they are. And that is the Teen Titans. As a franchise, they are huge and they have the chance to actually pop off again through James Gunn establishing a new Teen Titans movie. The problem with this is casting is key. For this, more than anything, casting is key. And when it comes to like video games or like animated stuff where there's not really any humans behind the screen, it is really hard to cast people that kind of sort of feel the vibes of cartoon characters. Because you have to remember, 2003 Teen Titans and Young Justice, those two projects, very similar in, I guess, ideas, both of them being about the younger generation coming together to fight bigger threats, they have a lot, and I mean a lot of fans, dude. It's to the point that if you're Gen Z or like late at the very far span of like millennial, almost at that Gen Z part, you have seen Teen Titans 2003. You don't even have to ask, have they seen Teen Titans? You just gotta mention Teen Titans and the conversation starts from there. I'm just giving you a free conversation starter pack. Start your conversations there, but if you look at the comics aspect, it's honestly horrible. I don't remember the last time the Titans had a good ongoing. The last good Titans comic was probably World's Finest Teen Titans by Mark Waid, but that was just 6 issues. Jeff Johns' run, and maybe JT Krul's run, I guess, the latter half of the post-Crisis era, that was probably the last good comic the Teen Titans had, and that was 2011. So we have been more than a decade without a good Teen Titans comic. Isn't that crazy to say, especially since the Teen Titans, they have potential to be the X-Men of the DC universe. Even back in the day when Marv Wolfman was doing a crazy job on Teen Titans and introducing a bunch of the things that we know today, like Raven, Starfire, Trigon, Brother Blood, Deathstroke, Hive, Jinx. He was establishing everything that we love about Teen Titans in that run. During that time, they were DC's bestseller, their biggest team, and they had a crossover with the X-Men, and that was during the Claremont era when they were at their peak as well. So that is who they should be compared to, and DC just dropped the ball. Yes, there was some good stuff like Titans by Devin Grayson, and of course the aforementioned Jeff Johns run and Young Justice by Peter David, but ever since then, we had like Scott Lobdell on New 52, Dan Abnett, while a good writer, his Rebirth run really started off strong and just got worse over time. Tom Taylor on Titans, I don't think I have to explain that to you, I'm not the biggest Tom Taylor fan anyways. The ideas were just very rehash, but just given a new coat of paint, nothing really that crazy. And that just sucks. There was this one good idea, which was almost a pitch perfect pivot, but it was mishandled really bad, and that was Teen Titans Academy. And in this academy, it will have veteran Titans, the Nightwings, the Beast Boys, the Starfires, the Ravens, the Cyborgs of the world, right? Even like Fab 5 members like Speedy, Wally West, Donna Troy, and Garth, all of them would be mentors to a new generation of heroes, kind of like Xavier's school, but hybridized to be about any sort of up-and-coming hero. And it's just a good way to introduce new characters without having them be out in the wild by themselves. They have the Titans to lean back on, and if they're popular enough, they can branch out into their own solo. That was brilliant, and it was a great way to rebuild the Titans as the heart of the DC universe and their future. The problem with this is that too many new characters are introduced very fast. They really lacked character development. Most of the students never really felt too fleshed out, except like maybe 1 or 2. It was cancelled after like about 15-ish issues, and it spent too much time tying into the future state storyline and big crossover event rather than telling its own grounded story with emotional consequences and resonance. It had all of the tools there to rival X-Men, but DC just wasn't about the plan. The Titans in general, just like the X-Men, they need a platform for all of these characters that can't maintain their own solo series, like a Raven and Beast Boy, to have a place to be and for the writing to be good. Not to say that these characters aren't good, I love these characters a lot, probably most in part due to the animated series and me growing up on that, but like characters like Tim Drake, Cassie Sandsmark, Bard Allen, Jaime Reyes, even like Static Shock, all of these characters can be given a consistent place as like team field leaders, as teachers in something like this. But DC just felt like this was a lost cause, which sucks because yeah, the writer that they got wasn't exactly the best, but if you give somebody like a Ryan North this pitch, he will do wonders with it. I am telling you, get somebody else to run this pitch back, and it will get the Titans back on track, because it is so depressing seeing the Titans go on L streak after L streak after L streak. The Titans might be the Spider-Man of comic book teams in the amount of L's they get back and forth. Please somebody break this cycle. It is possible and I will be waiting in line when it happens. And to keep it on DC for a little bit, because I'm trying to like reintegrate all of your childhoods all in one, because you know, we are a nostalgic bunch, and to bring back our childhood, I'm going to be talking about Static Shock. Now, Static, of course, he was created by Dwayne McDuffie and Dennis Hohen. Dwayne McDuffie is known for being one of the best superhero writers of all time, working on cartoons like Teen Titans, Justice League Unlimited, Ben 10. This man was everywhere, right? If it was a superhero project, his name was on at least one episode. And for Static, being a part of the Milestone imprint of DC, it allowed it to really be in its own universe and have its own set of social issues to talk about, right? With Milestone, of course, being a Black-owned and led division of DC, it was very authentic and grounded. It talked about racism, gang violence, class disparity, school pressure, Black perspective written by Black creators. He was like the Spider-Man of DC, with his own city, Dakota City. He's everything Miles Morales really should be, but just isn't at the moment. To give a little bit of a quote, Static was the hero who looked like us, lived like us, and talked like us without being a stereotype. That's what we all love to see, but what really boosted his popularity was the Static Shock television series. That show was like second to Family Guy on WB. Everybody was watching it. There's even like basketball cameos. Shaq was in one whole episode. Maybe Barkley was in it too. I don't remember all the players, but there was a lot of cameos in that show. Everybody was about Static Shock. It's kind of like Teen Titans, where millennials on the latter half and Gen Z watched the hell out of this show, but it was only really seen by like Black folks for the most part, because Teen Titans, you can talk to anybody about it. Static Shock, if they're Black, they probably have seen it. If not, it's kind of a coin flip. I'm pretty sure the latter half of millennials are more likely to see it as well, because Static as a show, it hasn't really got revamped that much. There isn't really that many clips online, and it was, I think, a much more mature and more political than a lot of people really thought a cartoon could be, talking about gun violence in schools, how bullying could lead to people dying, racism and police profiling, going to your friend's house where their father could be like prejudice, but their son isn't, and to kind of separate and see what a distinct difference that is, and how all of these traits don't necessarily have to be passed down to their kin, how things can change, and how perspectives can be molded to switch with the times if a connection is made, and you show these people why there isn't that much of a difference between us. Disability and bullying, grief and family trauma, all of these were key points in a children's show. And the DCAU in general, it wasn't really something that was foreign to it really, except for racism, but it coming from a teenage perspective and the Black American experience, that itself, in my opinion, was revolutionary. I haven't seen anything like it since for that specific demographic. The problem was the drop-off, and the drop-off, in my opinion, occurred when Milestone shut down. The original Static comics ended, I'm pretty sure, at 45 issues, and DC fully acquired the rights to fold them into their main universe. They left the characters on the shelf for years. It wasn't until like the late half of the 2000s where they started implementing Static into the Teen Titans, and then 2011 came around, the whole New 52 reboot, and a volume 2 of Static was created, but it wasn't really looking too good. People didn't like the book, and it was cancelled after issue 8. And there was a lack of integration. They didn't try to pair him with like Blue Beetle or like Batgirl. They didn't try to give him any Justice League membership. He was just left in the wild, no real presence in any major events, despite all the animated success that he had, and even being implemented in Young Justice. They were treating him like a guest character in his own universe. And now I would say there is a spark of hope with the recent comeback. In 2021, Milestone did come back. They relaunched their books, and Static Shock had 2 volumes. The first volume was solid, but the second volume with Ebon was really good. I loved that miniseries, and they just gotta keep on with that, right? Now they're making it so that it fully aligns with what people are dealing with today, because it's not like the 80s or 90s, right? A lot has changed since then, and Static Shock and a lot of the superhero genre as a whole has to keep up with the times. In the future, to really tap Virgil for all he's worth, this sounds horrible, just walk with me. For Static to be a big household name and to actually be used correctly, they have to do 3 things in my opinion. 1. Prestige HBO Max series. 2. Give him a long-running solo comic where they build up Dakota to be as prominent as, I don't know, a city like, I don't know, Star City or Bloodhaven. I'm not going to say Gotham or Metropolis just yet, But that's possible. Give us a Spider-Verse style animated movie and boom, set. That is money. That is DC's Miles Morales, but more original. Who wouldn't want that? Static Shock as a character, he had a very powerful debut and was the breakout character of the Milestone universe. He became one of DC's most defining heroes, but instead of trying to nurture that spark, they let it fade. Instead of managing his returns properly, they shelved him, they sidelined him. All of the characters from the Milestone universe, they made it seem like they were for naught. All of that history, all of that progress that was made, it was thrown away. That shock, it hasn't worn off yet. It just hasn't been given the power that it deserves. That was how did I create that bar in my head? Oh my goodness, run that back. Listen to what I just said. I'm gassing myself up too much. But yeah, very authentic, very grounded, talks about real world issues, and I think Static Shock is really needed in the world today. So yeah, DC, get on it pronto. Carol Danvers, honestly one of the saddest character revamps of all time, because right before that in Ms. Marvel, she was doing just fine. She was actually probably the best she's ever been, especially during the first half of Bruce Reed's run. That was some good stuff, some good eats. But after that, I'm pretty sure during the Kelly Sue DeConnick run, she completely revamped her character and made her a part of the Captain Marvel legacy. And that, I guess, was completely fine. It was something that has been brewing for decades. Miss Marvel, Captain Marvel, it seems like that's the next step in her evolution. And I'm glad they took that step. That promotion in and of itself did level her up when it came to the Marvel hierarchy, because she literally had the name of the company, right? She was stepping out of the shadow of Marvel finally, and making the name hers. Where the readers started turning against her was how they started to force the spotlight onto her without any organic growth. They started to push her heavily to be the new face of Marvel, part of the Marvel Trinity, without having the years of iconic story or consistent personality to back that up. If we were able to get the idea of greatness, just bask in it a little bit, Marvel tried to put Carol in that sauce, and unfortunately for them, a lot of people weren't having it, okay? The meal wasn't that good. Inconsistent writing and personality is a downside. She was a stoic leader, very strong and abrasive, an empathetic mentor, emotionally repressed, and then the next moment, she'll be the complete opposite, where it's who is this person? I don't know what her new phase is supposed to be when she's constantly getting a different personality each and every book she's in. In team books in particular, she became very unlikable and preachy. In Civil War II, that was the breaking point for a lot of people, when she had that authoritarian, morally gray enforcer type look, and she starts to do some preemptive justice, arresting people before they commit crimes based on a precog. And she ends up imprisoning heroes, indirectly causing deaths, refusing to back down, beating up Miles and just saying some crazy stuff. She was a fascist, and Marvel made her the face of the pro side again. And essentially it destroyed all of the goodwill that she built up beforehand as Miss Marvel. People hate her despite all the good stuff she had as Miss Marvel, which is the worst type of character assassination that you can have. And honestly, the foundation itself is very shaky. There's not really any character defining run. There's no real rogues gallery, no major supporting cast that lasts. She's a corporate mascot. She's there to fill a quota, not really letting her to develop all the other characters. And a byproduct of this forced push is that people don't like her books. And now she's stuck at 12 to 20 issues per volume before getting rebooted. A strong storyline can't be built off the ground because nobody wants to read it, and therefore no money is going into the comic. And now she's stuck in a cycle out of Marvel's own making. And to make it even worse, the MCU did the exact same thing, and Brie Larson, I think she's a fine actor. She has done some really good work, and as a person, I don't really have much problems with her, but she needed better PR training. The things that she said didn't give her that much good cred. On top of the fact that the material that was given to her and the direction wasn't exactly the most engaging, it was a recipe for disaster. They should have just given her her own corner of the Marvel Universe, I don't know, the Nova Corps or Alpha Flight, maybe explored her military trauma and PTSD, maybe on a cosmic level, explore that deeply, and let her develop slowly throughout multiple team books and solo arcs. She's pushed in a lot, and I mean a lot of comics, so there's enough material there to build up her character. It's just that they never really ran with it. She should have been Marvel's greatest success story, at least one of them. A very powerful hero that rose from being a side character to the main character, who rose from being her own thing stepping into the shoes of a legacy mantle. Before, in the Miss Marvel role, she was the Robin before the Batman. Now she's in the big leagues. But instead of letting that legacy grow consistently and naturally, Marvel forced her into the spotlight. And unfortunately, she's never been as unlikable as she is now. She was better off as Miss Marvel. Fans struggle to connect with the character to begin with. She has all this power, potential, and just a presence, but she was never really given the humanity to match. Ooh, snap that back. Bro, I'm cooking on these final bars, bro. I'm gonna stop though. Why am I doing all that? It wasn't even that good, but yeah. Should she have stayed in her Miss Marvel form? And this is based entirely if they actually hit the ground running and everything worked out. Do you think it was still better to stay as Miss Marvel, her own thing? Or is it better to be a legacy character? I don't know. In Earth's Mightiest Heroes, the Avengers cartoon, she was very likable there, so who knows? I don't know what the common consensus is, so I guess this is a good way to find out. And now we got Miles Morales. Now, Miles Morales in general isn't wasted potential. He's exactly the opposite, right? If you look at the video games, the movies, even like animation, they have pushed Miles a lot, especially like in video games, everybody's playing the PS4, PS5 games. In terms of movies, the Into the Spider-Verse, Across the Spider-Verse, all those films are, in my opinion, the best depiction of Miles Morales. His entire character is validated, in my opinion, because of those films. But when it comes to the comics, I don't think there's a single Miles comic that I really love, or a single consistent Miles characterization that was like, oh my goodness, I love this character. Because even characters with mid runs, if the characterization is good, it can carry that book. It can make me interested and invested because there's a character that I like and I want to see what they're doing and what they're up to and the fights they have to deal with and stuff like that. Miles hasn't had that until Cody Ziegler's run. Before that, he was, I don't want to get to the point of saying he was just Peter Parker but a different version, because he wasn't. There was obviously certain traits here and there that made him stand out ever so slightly, because I'm not the type of person to stand here and be like, he's more interesting than Peter. I see a lot of those trends and a lot of those YouTube shorts, Instagram reels, even TikToks of people claiming that Miles Morales is a great legacy character and better than Peter Parker. I don't know where you would get that from, and in my opinion, that is complete disrespect to the GOAT. He might not be having good comics right now, but if we take a look at the records real quick, look in the cabinet, you'd realize there is a lot of material that Miles cannot keep up with. Granted, I know some people are going to be like, he wasn't Spider-Man for as long as Peter, and that is valid, but it's not impossible for characters to step into a role, stay in that role for less time than the previous, and still be better. Nothing against Miles, I do like Miles, but there is so much potential. Cody Ziegler, I've only read 12 issues of his run, and it's pretty darn good for the most part. I'm not going to say and stand up here and be like, this is one of the greatest Spider-Man runs ever. No, but he does make me like Miles. He has more mannerisms that he has in the dialogue that make him feel like he's actually black. He sounded so, like before, I know it was because like Bendis and all those people were white and stuff like that, but at least give him some edge in his voice. He doesn't have to sound like, not even Peter Parker. He sounds like neutered Peter Parker. He's Insomniac Peter Parker in Spider-Man 2. You know, like when they have that very stilted dialogue in the second game for some reason where everybody's a bit too nice, too clean, and even if they do try to mix things up a bit, it does sound unnatural. That is what I'm talking about with Miles. And yes, I know that a lot of people, one of his standout traits, kinda, was in the beginning, he was a character who was very out of touch with his culture, and a lot of people were connected to it, and I understand that. That makes sense. A lot of people have immigrant parents, immigrant grandparents, and from there, a lot of your culture gets lost in translation, right? You're not really going to develop it as much because your parents want to make sure you are acclimating yourself properly into this new country that you're in, whether it's somewhere in North America, Europe, or otherwise. But while all of this is fine and dandy, as a person, wouldn't you want to learn more? And as a character, wouldn't you want them to learn more? Yes, you can relate to them, but you don't want to stay ignorant, right? You want to know more about your culture, why you and your people are so special. And that in and of itself is something that hasn't really been explored that much. I haven't read all of the recent run, but they have been doing a much better job with that. But it's more of an afterthought from what I've been seeing. I've said this before, I'll say it a million times. A lot of people have already said it. Putting him in Earth 616, in my opinion, was a mistake, but keeping him on Earth 1610 was also a mistake, right? Because that universe, he doesn't really have that many people to play with because everyone there is an edgelord, right? There's no one, maybe one or two good apples in a very rotten bunch. I sound like a teacher, I don't even know what type of analogy I'm trying to use, but yeah, he doesn't fit there. But in 616, he becomes redundant. There are so many spider people in the main timeline that there's not really any reason for him to be there. Yes, he keeps getting new power-ups, but that doesn't equate to good character writing. It just makes it fun and just hype moments and aura. And that is what I've been told a lot of Cody Ziegler's run kind of devolves into, but that doesn't really make a run not fun, so I'm not going to judge based on things I haven't read. It's just what I've been told by others. Furthermore, he is in a repetitive cycle. He grows confident to then be made unsure again, which is fine, especially when you get into situations that you aren't familiar with, or when you gain powers that you don't have control of. But once you stand on business a couple times, you gotta at least fake it until you make it. That's something that can be easily changed. That's not a big enough issue, but what I have a problem with is that there isn't exactly any defining arcs, any major Rogues Gallery members, or even any good love interests for him. People say Gwen Stacy. Stop. That's only for the Spider-Verse. If you look at the comics, I don't know why anybody would say that in general, but even his current girlfriend, I don't even know, I'm pretty sure it's the daughter of Adrian Toomes the Vulture for some reason. That relationship and its enjoyability is as flat as a plank. I do not care about their goals. It just doesn't make me interested. Granted, somebody could come in and do some great character writing. I know there was this one issue of Nightwing in the Rebirth run where he was dating Defacer, and I was like, yeah, she's kind of a cool character, but then there's this one issue in the aftermath of the Bloodhaven arc, and I loved her immediately. So there just needs to be one issue dedicated to the relationship and really getting the flow of dialogue between both characters and the inner thoughts. If you get all of that together, it feels like magic, but I haven't seen that yet, so yeah, in terms of villains, I couldn't name 5 Miles villains to you with a straight face. And I know them, I've read about them, but I still can't tell you their names. They're not exactly very memorable. Even the ones that have been added in Cody Ziegler's run, it's more of an improvement, but I don't remember their names. I don't have any great arcs I can tell you about. A lot of the cool things with Miles usually tends to happen with Peter's villains, which is perfectly fine. There's some really good wholesome moments between Miles and Rhino, but from there, it's not even a villain dynamic, so it goes back to Miles not having any good or just recognizable rogues. Where's the good story arcs? There's not many, and then they tend to like repeat or rehash some of Peter's. I know there was like a clone saga, there was a symbiote saga, he was given his own Iron Spider suit, he was given some sort of mentorship arc with Iron Man. I don't know what's so special about Miles. I don't know why people put them in their top 4. I want Miles to succeed, but it just doesn't really look that well. For me personally, I would create a whole city just for Miles, right? Maybe even make it unique, like a Bloodhaven type of situation, and just have it something out there that's not even related to the real world. That would be sick. Maybe give him some more like supernatural type of fights and quests. I know he was, I think he's the avatar for Anansi. I got spoiled on that. Run with it. Do something different. I know this goes straight back to Ziegler making hype moments, but still, use that to create a new avenue for Miles Morales storytelling. That's all I can think of, because I've seen they have tried everything. All you could really do with Miles is improve on what they've already been doing. And if you don't have a good writer in there, or a good team of people working behind you, it's just never gonna happen. And the pace that he's going, I don't see him ever catching up to somebody like Wally West or Kyle Rayner or even like Tim Drake. But only time will tell, and I'm rooting for Miles. Please, somebody save my mans. Now we got a character that I have talked about ad nauseum, and I'm just gonna link all the videos I've spoken about with Sentry because I feel like it would be much more productive for you guys just to watch that instead. But you know, a lot of you guys are just coming here for the first time and you just want to see my thoughts right off the bat. I've gone more in detail on a lot of my other videos, especially on the retcon video, but to kind of get my 2 cents in on the character, I know a lot of people like to call him like Marvel's Superman analog. I see him, if your cards are played right, he could have been kind of like a Dr. Manhattan type of character, and if not that, he's very much based on the Captain Marvel Shazam archetype. DC is kind of dropping the ball with Shazam. If they really wanted to, Sentry could have been the alternative, but they're messing that up too. He has the myth of a Greek tragedy right in front of him, always playing out, and there's so much potential for Sentry to redefine what a hero really is, but due to a lot of inconsistent writing and not trying to nurture that storyline, Sentry has fallen to the wayside. Not because he was weak, but because Marvel was too afraid to let the man fly. I don't know why they've limited his runs. Like every single time that they give Sentry a book, He's never made it to 20 issues. Isn't that sad? It's always like limited series. So there's only one storyline and they just go on from there. And because of that, he hasn't been able to build a proper supporting cast. He hasn't been able to build a rogues gallery. Granted, the Void technically is all that he needs, and having the Void, your main arch enemy, be built into your character, that you are your greatest enemy, a real Jekyll and Mr. Hyde type of situation, is great. Especially for the fact that there are times where the Void will just escape and you'll have to fight it one-on-one. That's cool, great, but for the most part, ever since he left his original storyline, which, mind you, him being one of the first superheroes on Earth and everybody being mind-wiped into thinking he wasn't even there, that was done before by Triumph in DC Comics. Just because Sentry has a cool backstory, it doesn't mean it's original in the slightest. The marketing for it and making Stan Lee say that he was a forgotten Golden or Silver Age character that he worked on that nobody liked, that was genius. And the 6-7 issue miniseries by Paul Jenkins, I like that. The moment they re-rolled the character into the main continuity, that's when things get very dicey, because Marvel Knights, the imprint where Sentry debuted in, is kind of like what DC Vertigo was. Some of the books were in canon, some of them are out of canon, and that was what Sentry was, and he works out of canon, but the moment you put him in, a lot of crazy stuff happens. That's the thing about comics. Adding extra things and retconning stuff will lead to some inconsistencies, and we gotta deal with it. If you want to learn more, check out the retcon video, the Sentry section. I talk in depth about how much I hate this. When Bendis took over, he became a character that was very easily manipulated. There was not a thinking bone in this man's body for a period of time. It's like, no, he should be much smarter than this. Even if he's not at base, he has matter manipulation, and he should be able to change his brain so that he has, like, I don't know, total recall, so that everything that's ever happened in his life he would be able to remember, but I guess that's out the window because writers don't really think that way. Whatever. He's used as a plot device to gauge how powerful other characters are, and usually he would lose. He's been killed twice, once in Siege and once in King in Black, and the second time he died, he hasn't been resurrected. He died in 2019, and he has not come back. And what really sucks that he is the ultimate mental health narrative. He could be a raw metaphor for depression, addiction, dissociative identity disorders, self-hate versus self-worth. There is so much stuff you can do with him. You can try to make a storyline where it's all about rebuilding his life, proper support, therapy, give him a purpose, maybe build out his supporting cast through that. And the way that he was done and implemented in the Thunderbolts really tells me that there's a lot more left in the tank, and Marvel just hasn't gotten the right writers to run with this. He is Marvel's cosmic god that they keep forgetting they have. And that is just a shame, dude, because if you look at any sort of social media, the amount of Sentry glazers there are could probably start a donut factory, and Marvel has just been sitting on a pile of cash. But hopefully, through Thunderbolts and maybe any other appearances that he has in future MCU projects, they realize his potential and they actually capitalize on it. Tim Drake, the smartest Robin of the 4, or I guess 5 if you want to include Stephanie, but the problem with Tim Drake, it all stems from the New 52. After that relaunch, Tim Drake has been going through it because either A, nobody wants to use his character, or B, somebody wants to be on the leaderboard. They want to see their achievements and their mismatch of whatever they want to do with Tim's character be ingrained with him for the end of time, right? They want to do something messy and for it to be sustained on his character for a while, and that's what they did when they made him bisexual. I'm not trying to be crazy or anything, but if they were going to make him bi, at least do something interesting, right? They just did half the work so that he would have full exposure on the TL. Everybody was talking about this. He was on the news. They just wanted headlines. I have a whole video on Tim Drake on my channel. I'll leave a little note on top or maybe in my description, or I don't know, even in the comments, but I have a whole video very in-depth on Tim Drake. I really do love what I did on that video as well. I did a pretty good job going completely in detail on the downfall of Tim Drake, but to go through it a little bit here, his state of being in limbo was so unnecessary, but it happened to every single character in his generation. I want to make a video actually on Young Justice, because that entire era with Superboy, Connor Kent, Cassie Sandsmark, Arrowette. Arrowette is kind of different because she retired from being a hero in that run. Impulse, they have been left to the wayside, which sucks. Because if you look at Robin and Superboy, both of them had a 100-issue run. They had more consecutive issues than Aquaman, and Aquaman has been around for a minute. Impulse almost made it to 100 issues as well. I think around like 80-ish issues and maybe even 90. That man was on a run. I'm telling you, these characters were highly popular, very relatable, while also fitting within their archetypes, while also being very unique within the superhero teenage branch. All of them were completely different, while also being quite the same. That's what you really want in a friend group, right? For everybody to be their own unique person while having that one unifying aspect that kind of keeps everybody together. That's what made it so special and why I loved Young Justice. On top of the fact that every single issue of Young Justice had their own comedic flair, whether it was through a very funny narrator to being very meta. I remember this one issue where Robin was kind of talking to a very sad Young Justice team, and they're talking about comic books and it being canceled, and the fact is, the matter of all of it, to get to the point, is that their comics were canceled while Robin still stayed afloat. That was why they were quote-unquote mad from a meta level, but in general it was for the fact that their books got canceled and Robin's didn't, which is really funny. But Robin as a character, what made him so special is that there wasn't really any tragedy to him. He just felt like being Robin was the right thing to do. He didn't want to be a sidekick. He just knew that the concept of Robin kept Batman anchored, right? He wasn't able to while out because there was always somebody holding him back from really letting loose, especially when crazy things were happening in his life to make him loosen up a bit, which we don't want that. Batman on timing is probably one of the scariest things to ever roam the Gotham streets, and Tim Drake knew that. And him becoming Robin was such a breath of fresh air. It was like having Peter Parker in his teenage years established in the Bat family. Like he was just injected into it and he was able to interact with Batman. However, in post-Crisis DC, the motto was we can't keep things the same forever. A status quo has to be broken from time and again. And this is when mid-2000s DC happens. He lost both of his best friends, Superboy through Infinite Crisis and Bart Allen, Impulse, through his Flash series. They both got killed. In Identity Crisis, his dad got killed. In War Games, Stephanie Brown, his girlfriend, got slit, dead. Kaputski. All of these things happen, and in Final Crisis, Batman dies, so he was literally left with nothing, on top of the fact that Damian Wayne showed up and Dick Grayson fired Tim because he felt like Tim wasn't somebody beneath him. He felt like equals and he couldn't have Tim be like that, right? He knew Tim's worth, but in Tim's perspective, there was nothing left, and this led to the Red Robin persona, and Red Robin was the pinnacle of Tim Drake, right? He became a proper legacy character, establishing his own legacy by becoming a new version of himself. He was in his Nightwing era. It symbolized him being independent, but also him being darker. He was bordering on the line of anti-hero. He was honestly ready to kill at certain points where Batman would never even think of that. Very self-destructive, but at the end of the series, we saw him complete a full character loop of actually saving Batman, because you have to remember, he was the one person who thought that Batman was alive. He had all of this intuition, but didn't know how to approach the case, but his hard work to actually save Batman led to him in the end securing that W, bringing back his father. And that was so touching to see. I loved it. Seeing him pull himself out of the darkness, realizing, yes, I have friends, I have other people around me that I could rely on to be with me in my darkest hour. I don't have to be alone. I don't have to follow the Batman method. Nobody's built like Bruce. Why am I trying to follow his flow? You know what I mean? And it led to some really cool moments, seeing him build up his rogues gallery with a new Lynx, with the Council of Spiders, with him throwing hands repeatedly with Ra's al Ghul and the League of Assassins. Ra's al Ghul finally calling him Detective. Ra's al Ghul's sister trying to make him a baby or something. Dude, that was crazy, bro. This one panel is kind of cursed, but yeah. Red Robin, he was on the top of the world. He had the same level of character progression as a Kyle Rayner and a Wally West. It was that good. But the New 52 happened and he was brought down to square one. Nobody wanted to use his character in any meaningful way. Rebirth happened and they brought him back. They reset him into the character that we all know and love, but a bit more new to the game. He didn't feel as experienced. He was still Red Robin, but they made him as close as possible. Gave him his villains back, gave him his analytical brain back, gave him his relationship with Stephanie back, making him very paranoid and kind of detached at times, starting the Gotham Knights, setting up the Belfry. It was just peak. And then after that, in like 2018, 2019, till now, they don't know what to do with this character. And if Chip Zdarsky actually came and did a Tim Drake run, I would be set, because his little work with Tim in his run, you could tell that he was a 90s Batman fan. And to kind of reiterate the pitch that a lot of people in this community are doing, Completely rename Tim's character. Don't make him Red Robin again because they already died on that hill and they messed it up. Make him Cardinal. Just as I've said before, it fits with the Robin Bird theme. You can just set him up as a private detective scouring around the world, finding cases and solving anything that the writer can think of. Make it like a one-issue new story kind of format where every single issue there's something new happening. There's no like long arcs, kind of like what Matt Fraction is going to be doing in this year's new Batman run. I'm very excited for that. Just implement that for Tim Drake and we'll all be set. Bada bing, bada boom. Done. Now let's talk about the Inhumans. Now the Inhumans were the empire that Marvel tried to crown as #1, right? The biggest team in Marvel, but then they abandoned them, and I kind of want to talk about why they worked and why they had such a huge fall. And yeah, you might not want to consider them the Inhumans, that is, as a team, more so than like a race might be the best choice. We all know who the main characters are from the side characters and who the background characters are, right? Black Bolt, Medusa, Karnak, Crystal, Gorgon, all of them. I'm going to classify those guys as a team. And of course, they're created by the Terrigenesis and all that stuff to get their powers, right? So they're connected, kind of like mutants. And I guess the easiest way to break down the Inhumans, since Marvel doesn't really give them enough exposure for people to know, they're like an answer towards mythology and monarchy, right? Part science fiction, part Greek tragedy. And in the many books that they're in, they're usually seen as a mysterious backdrop of sorts. They're always there, but they're not really the main characters, specifically like when they first got introduced and whenever they're in stuff like the Fantastic Four, Silver Surfer, Hulk, or the Avengers. They're very fascinating side characters with their own political structure, rituals, alien culture. All of that was really good, and they didn't even need to have the spotlight to be interesting. And that's why a lot of the characters, especially Black Bolt, became a cult favorite. They were steeped in mystery and people just wanted to know more. But why they fell is because of, as I've said before, the corporate push. Same thing that happened to Captain Marvel happened to the Inhumans. They were Marvel's mutant replacement because in the early 2010s, Marvel decided they didn't want to do that much with X-Men because Fox owned their rights and they didn't want to have comics that promoted the films that they weren't going to make money off of. All of that stupid stuff that doesn't make any sense because they would still make a lot of money off of X-Men because X-Men is their best-selling title anyways. Like even now, X-Men has so many titles. That's such a stupid... okay, whatever. Either way, they were seen as a solution. Replace mutants with Inhumans. Through Infinity, Inhuman, Uncanny Inhumans, All New Inhumans. They created Kamala Khan, probably the only breakout Inhuman that there ever was. Thankfully, at least there's one. But why it didn't work? Readers didn't feel like they were given enough time to connect with the Inhumans. Characters were introduced really fast, like Inferno, Iso, Mosaic, but they weren't really developed, especially in that time. The royal family lost their mystique because they were overexposed and they had to fulfill all these crossover and team up roles. And the death of the X-Men narrative through like Inhumans vs. X-Men and stuff like that painted them as antagonists, so more people didn't like them. Of course, they didn't have any strong ongoing from like 2013 to 2017. Even really good ones like Black Bolt by Saladin Ahmed, they were very self-contained. It didn't really build upon the larger mythos. You could read that book by itself, and I recommend you do that if you're not going to read any Inhumans. And then, of course, you have to remember the TV show did happen that was supposed to launch out of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and it was a disaster. Bad writing, bad effects, poorly received across the board, and Black Bolt's debut was in an empty IMAX theater. And after that, Marvel just backed out quietly. But you see what I'm saying? There's so much wasted potential. There's cosmic history written all over it. Political drama like a Game of Thrones meets science fiction. There's a lot of like philosophical weight to a lot of the decisions that are made, right? Destiny, like the genetics that they have, monarchy versus like freedom. What could have been a metaphor for like privilege and like evolution just found itself to be a half-baked idea. And a lot of fans felt like maybe that is what the mystery was trying to prevent people from understanding. I think the Inhumans are more than that, especially when you look at books like Paul Jenkins' Inhumans. That was the definitive Inhumans take in my opinion, mainly because it focuses on the inner workings, the cogs in the machine of the Inhumans. What makes them tick? Why are they so special? And what should their place be in the broader Marvel landscape? And it showed us their class divides and the cosmic overtones mixed in with the political fantasy is what made them so special. They lived in this giant place called Atalan, their own hidden city. And the plot itself, to break it down, is just humans attacking Atalan, escalating into a full-scale invasion. But at the heart of that story is the burdens of Black Bolt and his silence, Medusa being his voice and his queen, and obviously the emotional trauma of the Terrigenesis mist on the young, right? What made them Inhumans in the first place. And I loved what they did with Black Bolt. Jenkins probably gave us one of the best versions because he is a man who suffers because he can't speak, right? He's isolated by his role and his power. Every decision that he makes or doesn't make is a weight on his soul. Every silence costs him something. But man, when he releases his voice, it is cathartic. Every moment is earned and terrifying. One of the bigger themes, as I mentioned before, is the genetic destiny and class division. The Inhumans don't get to decide who they are. Terrigenesis alters them forever, physically, emotionally, socially. And while some become powerful, some become outcasts. There is no undo button. And this story explores how a lot of the kids, the youth, the next generation dread their mutation, which I guess if I'm gonna like relate it to like the real world, it might be like a metaphor for trauma, maybe puberty, growing up way too fast, and maybe even being just different compared to everybody else because of an illness, or maybe you're like smarter than everyone and you're like the nerd in the class. All that stuff. In a world where your identity is forced upon you, what does free will even mean? And in terms of class division, not all Inhumans are created equal. The series introduces something called alpha primitives, or kind of like subservient, genetically altered, engineered class citizens, who are basically slaves, which is crazy. So Jenkins doesn't shy away from the ugliness behind the mask of beauty that it shows to the world. That is what makes the Inhumans special. And Marvel has not, even through the overexposure of these characters, they have not capitalized on this in the slightest. But yeah, just to retain your attention just a little bit, I am going to be posting a little bit more on my Instagram. My Instagram handle is just NatrixNate. Feel free to search it up. And yeah, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on post notifications so you know when a new video goes live. And yeah, see you all later. Take care. Deuces.